days and pleasant nights, fellow fans of the man that I always say lives up to his last name. That's right, Mr. Stephen King, on this special weekly edition that I do every single Sunday here on The Horror Show, entitled Hail to Stephen King. And as you can see by this beautimous bookshelf beside me here, Stephen King is indeed my favorite author. I have read nearly all of his books at this point. I started 7 years ago with Carrie and went through everything in its published order. I'm actually rereading the Dark Tower stuff right now, which is on a totally different note, but I am to the Bill Hodges trilogy, just starting Mr. Mercedes. I read Revival recently, which was amazing, so I am right there on the cusp, my friends, of having read every single bit of his officially published work, which is very exciting. So every week when I get together and do this, I always try to talk a little bit of King news as of now. Last week was the first time that I really was there was so much King news to cover. It was like, how can I not mention the fact that it broke the internet and, was the most viewed trailer in 24 hours of all time? Or, how could I not mention, the Dark Tower getting delayed again for a week, or whatever it was. It was a very, very busy news week. This week, little bit less happening, although one thing we have to mention that I think is pretty amusing is the fact that, how there are so many adaptations of The King coming out this year. It's mind-boggling. I've covered them a lot in the last few weeks of, episodes of this show. However, his newest novel, which is coming out, not to be confused with the Castle Rock novella that Cemetery Dance is doing, his new official novel that is being done with his son Owen King, has as of this week been announced to already be adapted into a television series, and that is the near 800-page monster Sleeping Beauties, which is about a strange thing that is happening with women where they are falling asleep and they almost come into a cocoon-like state, and if awakened, they're rabid and crazy. And so essentially, when women start going to bed across the entire world, men are, as they probably learned through trial and error, awakening them is invoking, crazy bee-dizzle mode or something. I don't know. They start to just leave them be. And so yeah, this is back to the days now where when King has something before it's even published, the rights are already set in place for an adaptation. And so that shows more so than anything else just how in vogue the dude is once again, which is really cool. I'm looking forward to the book. I know that I'll be, caught up with the Bill Hodges trilogy by then, and I'll be able to, just dive right into it when it comes out in September, on September 26th, actually, which is exciting. I'm assuming that the adaptation will probably follow in early 2018, but we don't really have too many details beyond that. And the other kind of cool news this week is that another Stephen King short story that was never adapted, and it's not even from one of the newer collections, it's from Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the largest tome of shorts that he has ever put out in the early 90s, and had some of the last Castle Rock stuff, at least up until that point. And it's a story called My Pretty Pony, and it's another one of those that it's not scary Stephen King. It's just more so, I guess, ponderous, ruminating, and it's about this elderly man who is, presumably on the verge of death. And it was originally supposed to be a smaller piece in a much larger novel that King ended up scrapping, which is kind of fascinating. But he gives his pocket watch to his grandson and just kind of explains, hence the title My Pretty Pony, that time is a pretty pony that is almost unforgiving if you don't, just treat it with care and so on. And so the intriguing thing is that the elderly man is actually going to be played by none other than Tobin Bell, and Tobin Bell everybody knows as the Jigsaw dude from the Saw movies, which are about to see a resurgence this October, which I think my co-hosts on The Horror Show are a little more excited about that than I am. I lost interest in Saw after the second entry when the girl got thrown in all the syringes, and I just couldn't do it, man. But they're gonna put a trap of some sort on me and make me watch 3 through 6 or 7 or however the hell many there were. But yeah, Tobin Bell, I always thought that he was the best part in those first 2 Saw movies that I saw. And so yeah, he's going to be playing this elderly grandfather in an adaptation that Josh Boone is executive producing, and Josh Boone is the guy who is supposedly adapting The Stand and Revival, and he's trying to get all these different Stephen King projects off the ground, and so he's obviously passionate about the guy, which I can appreciate. So yeah, those are your 2 bits of King news this week. Kind of a short King week, you know, which is kind of surprising with how relentless all the release information has been. But I think there were a few publications that last week said it was like the biggest week for Stephen King news, like maybe ever, or at least in the new century and millennia and so on and so forth. So, one thing that I do every week on this show as well is tackle a viewer question and try to basically make it the theme of the show and the main thing that we discuss. And even cooler, if you guys are watching this, because I want commenters, I want interaction, not just with me, but amongst all of you. We're trying to build like a King cult, as horrible as that sounds. Just somewhere where, you know, a King community maybe is a better way of putting it. Cult sounds too drinking the Kool-Aid-ish. But we want you to interact with the show and give your thoughts, and we want to turn that into content, which is what I find so fun and fulfilling about this show. And so if I choose your question and turn it into the main theme of the episode, I will send you a Coexist shirt, which is our exclusive design, which we have available on our TeePublic site. There's better lighting for it. So this is available on our TeePublic site, and we appreciate all of the show support for any who have purchased one over there. But if you want one for free, watch this show every late Sunday night and comment, you know, give your thoughts. And even if you don't have a question about Stephen King or any of his work, just, you know, we appreciate the interactivity. It's really awesome, and it just makes us happy and makes me happy, especially since I'm the one who puts this show together personally every single week. So, this question has been sitting in my master list for a while, and that's the thing. Don't get discouraged if you don't see your question in like a couple weeks or a month or whatever. I have a master list of all the best questions. In fact, I think it's of all of the questions everyone has ever asked in the comments on the horror show. So I am intending to eventually get to all of them because I've been seeing less questions. So, you know, rack those brains, guys. Give me some thoughts and such. So this is a rather lengthier one, y'all. So bear with. This is from L Walsh 0. I'm assuming. I don't think it's an O, but could be wrong. And he says, Stephen King. What a fitting last name. I co-host a horror movie podcast, shameless plug here, called The Horror Cast. So yeah, shout out to The Horror Cast, and to anybody who wants to go check it out, please, you know, do a little bit of research. I'm going to try to find a link or something that I can put in to actually send you proper to his stuff or his team of people or whatever it may be. But he continues, I'm a fan of your stuff, dude, much appreciated, but back to Stephen King. What written sequel would you like to see King do most of all his books? I would have to shoot here and say my favorite all-time novel, It. Kind of funny, since that's, you know, everybody's all the rage about It right now, and it's, you know, it broke the internet, as we mentioned. But finishing off here, I would love to hear more of the cycle of the cosmic demigod Pennywise. Actually, I wouldn't even mind a prequel to It as well. There is so much for the imagination with the 27-year cycle, so what is yours? Now, I would probably normally pick It. I would probably normally pick a lot of different stories, but I was trying to think within the context of where I felt like there was finality in the story, and so I'm not gonna, you know, clamor for I don't know, something where everything was kind of wrapped up in a nice little package, and there's obviously no need, like a Cujo sequel, or, you know, what would be another one, you know, anywhere where the protagonists are all dead, obviously. And so, you know, I would personally prefer a It prequel, because with all the stuff that you saw with the flashbacks to things that had happened in the 27 years before and before and before, from, you know, the jazz club burning down to the stuff with the Easter egg hunt and all the kids, I think that an It prequel would personally work better, just to address that. But that's not the question. The question is, what is a Stephen King written sequel to a novel? And so if we're going to keep these stipulations too, amigos, we are not going to be talking about sequels to short stories or even novellas. I'm sticking strictly to the very long form of storytelling, which we all know Stephen King is so stinking fond of, for better or for worse at times. But I just have a few notes here. So I can't go with something like Salem's Lot. can't go with something like The Stand. I can't even go with something like The Talisman or The Dark Tower, because there has been sequels of sorts to all of these. And Salem's Lot and The Stand tie in with The Dark Tower, so I can't go with that. And then The Talisman, we ended up meeting back up with Jack Sawyer, and he's like a like aging alcoholic detective of sorts. And so that was actually, it was a book that tied in much more with The Dark Tower than I was expecting, but that's for another video, because I would love to discuss the dueling adventures of Jack at some point, because they're fun. And it was the first time when I really realized that, as I was reading sequentially through everything, that King could do stuff besides horror. I think Different Seasons came before. Yes, it did. And so that was maybe the first time I knew, but I'd seen him doing short stories that were kind of not supremely scary and more grounded in reality beforehand. And so that was an indication. But long form and fantasy, no less. I love The Talisman. I would love to talk further about that. Then there's also the sequels that we didn't think we needed, and those would be Black House, that's the first that I can think of, the one with Jack Sawyer I was just talking about. Also, Dr. Sleep, the sequel to The Shining. That was a sequel that I didn't think we needed, and I ended up absolutely adoring all the stuff with the True Knot and tying in with what Danny Torrance has become that is similar to his father as years go by. Fascinating stuff. I'm still, as I told you a few episodes ago, going to do a retro review. Well, it's not even that retro. It only came out a few years ago, but maybe a proper The Shining 40th anniversary kind of sequel review and talk about Dr. Sleep. I look forward to that. The other one that I have to mention for sequels that we didn't know that we needed is The Wind Through the Keyhole, the Dark Tower story, which takes place in between 4 and 5, and 4, which is Wizard and Glass, is the one that I'm currently rereading right now. And just to give a quick shameless plug, that retro review is not going to show up on the regular Sunday schedule. That's because I have been putting out all of those reviews on the 19th of every month. So you're going to get a bonus Hail to Stephen King episode all about Wizard and Glass on the 19th of this month here in April. So look forward to that. But honorable mentions, ones that I sat there and I thought, I'm like, this could work in a sequel format, and I think it would be intriguing. Have to mention Needful Things. Needful Things ends with your evil shopkeeper, whose name is eluding me at this point. I feel terrible. Getting away. The man who basically helped to destroy a good portion of Castle Rock with driving everybody mad and all the stuff that transpired there. He ends up kind of appearing in his true form at the end of the book, and you see that he is not in fact a man. He is something much more fearsome and frightening, and you presume he's just going to go start the process again in a different city. I think that would be cool. Maybe it's not happened because it would be just far too much retread, but that intrigues me, and I think Cecil and I actually mentioned that on the news at one point, because we do horror show news every Friday, that would be cool. Another one that I have to mention is Christine, and the fact that Christine, the John Carpenter adaptation, it's not without its merits, but I'm not as big on it as a lot of people. I think I even had a commenter recently who was telling me the movie was better than the book, and in this case I completely disagreed. I thought that the movie was total cheese, and just the entire idea of the possessed car that I love is now sitting on my shelf right up there in From a Buick 8, which I finally, this past week, tracked down a copy of at cover price for the special Cemetery Dance Illustrated Edition, which Bernie Wrightson did. So after his passing in the last couple of weeks, I went and started vigilantly hitting up eBay again after just getting discouraged for a while because of the fact that it was like $300-400 for that edition, because it's so long out of print, and it's one of the few Cemetery Dance Stephen King things that I did not possess, but I finally got it for cover price. It came all the way from Canada, Vervey's land up north. Love you, girl. I'm not sure if you were tuning into this particular episode or not, but you were a frequent commenter and viewer on the standard trailer reactions and reviews and so on and so forth. But yeah, Christine, the end of the novel, and this is going to be mild spoiler, just the paranoia that the protagonist after escaping has, and just the weird, he's almost like hearing machine sounds and revvings or something like that. It's really deserving in my opinion, and I think that there's a lot that could be done there Now, moving along, Black House, a sequel to Black House, I think would be fantastic, because what happens to Jack Sawyer at the very end of Black House, it ties in with the Dark Tower, and I feel like it is ripe for a complete crossover, personally, where you finally see just those two universes coming together, because you know that they kind of exist within, you know, not just the same Stephen King multiverse, but they are approximated and like near each other, like almost overlapping. And so I would love to know what happens with Jack Sawyer after you know, his adult story in Black House and further interests. That would be amazing. Firestarter is another one. You know, let's bring some more stuff with the shop in. It wasn't one of my favorite novels or anything of Stephen King's earlier work, but they tried doing this sort of thing as a TV movie, if I'm not mistaken. Ugh, don't even bother with it. Revival would also be great because of the way that it ends, and there are just some lingering things which are amazing. I'm actually also going to say Pet Sematary, for the sheer fact that Pet Sematary, we know that things were kind of wrapped up in a nice, neat little package, even more so in the movie, which Mary Lambert did, where they took King's ending and they added a little bit more creepy closure. And I talked about that in my top 3 because it is one of my top 3 Stephen King stories and adaptations ever. I didn't like the Mary Lambert sequel. However, I'm fascinated by the idea of King himself tackling just something else happening with, you know, those soiled Indian burial grounds of sorts. I think that would be amazing, because the sequel on film, King had zero to do with, except for probably cashing a fatty paycheck. So, yeah, what are you gonna do there? I think that would be dope. American Vampire, not a Stephen King novel, so the only reason that I mention this is because I portrayed the character in a short film that we did here at the Horror Show, which really just I'm very proud of. And as many people may not know, Stephen King actually wrote the other half of the original volume of American Vampire, with Scott Snyder doing the like flapper era in the 20s, but then in the late 1800s, King did the origin story of the cowboy vampire outlaw Mr. Skinner Sweet, which I had the blessing to portray, but that's not a novel, so I just threw that in as one more shameless plug. So what, pray tell, is my choice for something that I would love to see the continuing story of in the written form as a novel for Stephen King? And I'm like getting my feet down because I'm ready to discuss this, at least for a little bit with you guys. And that is the one thing that's not sitting on my shelf right now, because it has been lent to a friend of mine who does not necessarily like scary stuff, but she is a big fan of fantasy. You King fans might know what I'm referencing. The Eyes of the Dragon. The Eyes of the Dragon was the first time where King, there's mild fantasy in the Talisman here, but this was where he went like just, I hate to use the term like balls deep, but yeah, that's what King did with The Eyes of the Dragon. He basically wrote a Lord of the Rings, you know, Game of Thrones for you more modern readers and viewers and stuff like that, take on just a medieval fantasy. And I loved it. Loved it so much, in fact, that I would long more so than anything else. I mean, obviously I would love more Dark Tower. Obviously I would be interested if he had another idea for, you know, all of the other entries that I mentioned up to this, but I felt like there were enough loose ends at the you know, conclusion of The Eyes of the Dragon where another story, a true sequel in fact, would be pure perfection. And you could even make the true sequel to this tie in directly with the Tower once again, because we learned in The Little Sisters of Eluria, which was published in Everything's Eventual. I'm also going to be doing a retro review of that because of the fact that it takes place in between the events of the flashbacks in The Dark Tower 4, you know, where he's dealing with the coffin hunters and all that stuff, and the original, you know, gunslinger book where he's, you know, wandering through the desert after the Man in Black. And so it's a very interesting confirmation that we got in Little Sisters of Eluria, because that's where we learned that the land that The Eyes of the Dragon takes place in, which is Delane, is in-world as well. You know, it's right in, you know, Roland's neck of the woods, man, and that's because when he is like totally messed up in this little hospital with these vampire chicks who are posing as nuns, he finds out from this other guy who's in there with him that he is from Delane, and that's when click, 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 you realize King is just putting even more fabric tissue together. Although you really got the vibe in The Eyes of the Dragon that it was in the same world. It might not have taken place in the same time period in Roland's lifetime, as lengthy and who knows how long in all specifics that it was. But yeah, this book is so fascinating because of the fact that it's got some illustrations throughout, and that is especially cool. There's a character named King Roland, which is even funnier about it. And this king has 2 sons, and yet there is a meddling magician in his court by the name of Flag, and you guys know who this dude is. And so he is essentially trying to get the power and destroy this kingdom, and it's just it's lots of underhanded craziness going on. They actually get the title of this novel from the fact that The Eyes of the Dragon, there's this dragon which the father, King Roland, has killed, and there is like a secret passageway where you can look through the eyes of the dragon and see what is going on in this like private chamber and stuff. And so older brother gets totally framed for a murder. Younger brother takes the throne instead, and so Thomas, the younger one, is totally manipulated by Flag, and the older one, Peter, is just stuck in a tower. Are you seeing more correlations here and stuff? And so I'm not going to give like an extensive amount of information about The Eyes of the Dragon here, because I would hope to do that in like a long form proper video at some time. But essentially it just concludes with so many loose ends about Flag, about one of the brothers who goes on a quest to try to figure some stuff out at the very end of it. And this is where I have to just dance over the lines. But anybody who has read The Eyes of the Dragon, there is a conflict that they mention happens after the book, and kind of a journey that is associated with it. That is what I want to see. You could tie it in with the Dark Tower more properly. It would be fascinating, amazing. It was a very tremendous book already in its own right, and I think that you could really cross the streams, so to speak, and it would be super, super cool. So that, my friends, and L. Walsh Zero is my pick for the Stephen King book that, more so than any of the others that I mentioned, I would love to see a proper written novel sequel for. So get a hold of us, man, and let us know whether you would like a black or a white coexist shirt, what size you would like. Hit us up through email. Mine is infuegomedia@gmail.com, or you can hit up the horror show, and I will get you there as well. So I could extend a grande gracias to all of you fans of the King that have been here with me today. We are going to be doing tons of coverage at the Phoenix Film Festival for the next few days. It's been an exciting process, but I'm always excited weekly to be here with you talking about the King. I've been Jaime Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. At the beginning of May, I am relaunching my personal page in Fuegotainment, which is going to cover all of the hottest entertainment with an edge that is not scarific. So your sci-fi, your fantasy, a lot of stuff that King delves into when he is not getting supremely fright-tastic. And so I'm looking forward to that, and I look forward to seeing all of you next week here on Hail to Stephen King. Once again, comment, like, share, subscribe to this video. Be super cool. We greatly appreciate it here at the Horror Show. So until next time, Sin Amigos, hasta luego. Long days and pleasant nights. May your days be long upon the earth. And until I cross paths with you once again, stay scared and read Stephen King. Got my reading glasses on this time.